it created the script. I then just filmed the script to camera and we posted it and it got 9 million views. So I was like, wow, this works. My thoughts on AI are, if you give it a brain, then it can do work to your standard. So I was thinking, how can I clone myself? You can ask ChatGPT to be an incredible copywriter, but if you're the discernment of talent, but you don't know what's good versus bad, then who's the judge?
All right, so Marianne, thank you so much for coming on the Agency Growth Club. So bit of background about you. I came across your content probably, I'd say just over 6 months ago. I think I told you this before. I literally took it all and sent it to my whole team. I was like, guys, and I feel like every single week I'm sending like one of your short videos that are on Instagram over to my team being like, guys, we need to like get on this. So that's how I came across you. You are like Mrs. AI content girl in my head. So I'd love to start off with, you put up a video today and it was about getting 9 million impressions on LinkedIn and how you created a custom GPT to do it and it followed the whole brain framework that you talk about. Can we start on that?
Of course, yeah. So I've been creating content around marketing for the last 6 years consistently. Started creating content with like a 30-day trial for myself to show up because I'd basically started a business and had no customers and no one knew I'd started the business. So I was like, I need to just get into this and start posting content. So got out of that comfort zone space and cringed myself out and hovered over the delete button more times than I want to admit, but started the content and content creation. And so like I've been doing videos, as I said, for like 6 years. And when AI came onto the scene and I was seeing how everyone was using it, and they were going to AI and saying, act like an X specialist and produce Y result, I started testing that myself. And I was like, okay, all of these responses are so inconsistent. We're not getting the same thing every time. When I then try and locate the source of the information, if you ask like, where's this information from? Like, you know, what links have contributed to your answer? You follow that journey and their old posts and their old blog posts and their things that aren't like, you know, now's practice, they're outdated. So I was like, okay, well, I can't ask ChatGPT to just script write for me because it's rubbish. It's not going to do a good job. So I was like, okay, well, I've got like 6 years worth of content. So what if I just export everything, filter that by the certain metrics, depending on what it is that I'm trying to achieve from that piece of content. So virality for this one. And I try and uncover like what are the consistent frameworks that are relevant with all of these videos? Like what are the patterns and mirrors that are the same? And so I took all of those videos, analyzed all of the scripts, and then created frameworks around those scripts of what tactics I was doing. I never used to be a video scripter. Like I would always just show up on camera and just talk because I only ever talk about content where my head is at. So the things I'm actually doing day to day, which is why I found it easy because I haven't kind of had to create a big content plan. It's just from how I'm showing up day to day. So when AI hit the scene and I was starting to uncover how could I speed up the process for my own production, I took all of those scripts, created the frameworks, and then loaded them into a GPT. And I started testing using that. So I was asking the GPT to follow the framework in order to deliver me the script. And it was doing an all right job, but there was so much missing. And that's kind of where the first start of this brain sprint or brain comes from. Because the things that it were getting wrong was it didn't really know me. It didn't really sound like me. And it didn't know the audience that I was trying to position myself in front of. So it was doing an okay job at the script, but it was like lacking that specificity for audience. So I then decided to take my company vision, mission, values, value proposition, avatars, tone of voice, and load all of that alongside the framework. And it was insane. I was like, wow, okay, now it's really doing the job. And then I layered in additional frameworks that I've built over the years with the agency for like psychological triggers in marketing and my thoughts on a hook stack for a video format and all of this kind of knowledge. So instead of the GPT going and acting like a video script writer or a viral video script writer. It was going to my framework, pulling the information, and then providing me with the result. So for this particular post that you're talking about, there was I went and looked at BuzzSumo to see what top stories were hitting that day, and everyone was talking about AI influencers and the rise of them. And so I could see that that was getting a lot of shares and mentions across Twitter and across media outlets. And I was like, cool, I think this is a strong one. So I then, with the frameworks that I had in this GPT that was built, literally just pulled the link to that article. It created the script. I then just filmed the script to camera and we posted it, and it got 9 million views. So I was like, wow, this works.
That's crazy. And you touched on the brain framework. What does brain stand for those who don't know?
Yeah, so my thoughts on AI are, if you give it a brain, then it can do work to your standard. So I was thinking, how can I clone myself across all of the areas of marketing that we cover, so that if my teams are using AI, they're going to get the same result that I would, even if not prompting it as I would be prompting it. Because everybody's saying the skill in AI is prompting, but there's a huge piece missing in that it's also the knowledge. We were having this conversation today with a developer of mine, because someone's recently come to us with a project where they had a developer pitch on a project that we pitched on. The developer pitched at like 3 times cheaper than we pitched the price at. And we were like, okay, well, there's no way we can do it for that. So we stepped back. This client came back to us a few weeks later, has come back to us 2 months later and said, all of this has been great on the front end, but the back end, it doesn't work. Like, we think he's vibe coded the whole thing. And that's the thing, right? Like, yes, you can get AI to do the job, but if you don't really know what's good and what's bad, the back end structure and system of that is going to break. So what we've tried to do is codify all of our knowledge into frameworks. And so when we've got the frameworks, which are the execution layers of how we do what we do, so video script writing, image generation, script writing for paid media campaigns, SEO copy, you name it, we can then layer on top of that a brand's information. So the B of brain is brand assets. That's a brand's vision, mission, value proposition. Then it's a tone of voice guideline that is like 30 pages long. It's not just we sound friendly and collaborative. It's these emojis, not these. This is how we sound when we're sad. This is how we sound when we're happy. This is how we share good news, bad news. These are our brand phrases. These are the products we sell. This is how we sell them. These are our customers. We then break down all the avatar layers. So every single avatar, like customer segment that we go after for that brand, has a document. And then we do a tone of voice or an OS document for every product or service that they sell. So if this company sells shampoo, conditioner, hairspray, we have a tone of voice for how we sell each of those products. What are the core benefits? How do we talk about it? What words and phrases do we use and not use? So each product or service has a tone of voice as well. So what happens then when you start to layer this stuff in the back end, it's like a document architecture, is the brand assets and the request framework start working together. So if you've got a video script writer and you've got the context of the brand assets, you can say, we're selling this shampoo to these 3 new avatars. Can you layer this into whatever it is? And it's got all of the context and it's using all the right phrases and all the right words. The A of brain, so you've got brand assets, request frameworks, which are the SOPs of how to do the outcome. The A is AI instructions, and the instructions are built within this brain system, so they know to reference the B, the R documents, the A, the I, the N. That gets loaded in Markdown format. The I is the interaction directives, which I would have liked a better name, but I needed brain to work. So interaction directives is basically prompts and prompt sequencing. And the clever part about the prompt sequencing is, with every request framework that we've built, within that education is a rubric, so that the AI can score itself based on the education. So the video scriptwriter, for instance, that one, I did one pass at saying to the AI, score yourself. And it scored itself on everything that I taught it. And it noticed 2 areas that it was weak. I think it was in the hook stack, and it was in the psychological triggers that we were pulling in. It corrected itself, and then it delivered the final script. So that's how I got it to produce then consistently. So once you've got the AI instructions loaded in and you're using the right prompts and prompt sequencing, which is like the scoring, the final part is just next level examples. And this is how you build on every GPT or GPT project that you've ever created, because then that 9 million video, because it's an outlier, gets put into the examples. So that then just continually makes the system better. And you can do this for any marketing output. We've got these for building landing pages. We've got these for, SEO copywriting, video copywriting, content creation calendars, anything like that. Once you've got a system and a process, you can then teach AI to do it your way, and then you can like maximize the output of that, basically.
Awesome. I love it. And let's say, okay, so there's an agency owner listening to this. They are overwhelmed. They think, wow, that's a 3-month project, 4-month project. What advice would you give to them on that? How much time do they need to put aside to this? Because obviously the ROI is you're going to be extremely efficient and your workload's going to go through the roof.
Yeah.
So how long should somebody put aside to this?
It's a great question. I think we had an advantage because, and I realized this only in the middle of this year, because at the beginning of the business, my business, I started the business with like £2,000 in my bank account. So I couldn't afford to hire senior talent. I had to hire grads that were hungry and wanted to learn. So between the hours of 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. in Starbucks on Wardour Street, I would build these like frameworks and processes that would literally be like, click here, press this, do this, taking them step by step on all the processes that we were using, so that when 9 a.m. hit and I had to be client facing and doing client work, they could be operating like I would have done in the background. The middle of this year, I was like, oh my goodness, I've got all those frameworks that I built from back in the day. We could teach AI with these. So I then just reformatted, rebuilt, put them all into the right structure that they needed to be. And suddenly all of our processes, because we already had them, could be AI maxed. So I think the question is, where in your agency do you have process already? That's a quick win, because if you then take that process and put it into the AI space, the outputs can start to generate. Where you haven't got process, I would slow down first and think, how much time is this going to save us if this was being done with AI? What are the other advantages to us in the business? And is it worth us building that process? There's an amazing tool as well for this, which I love, called Guide. I think it's GUIDDE. And if you do a process that's the same every single day, you can just turn Guide on and you go through your normal process. It tracks every click, everything you scroll on, every action you take, and then it automatically creates an SOP for you. So you could do that with whoever's doing the process, review that process document, feed that into AI, and then you start to build your systems.
That's awesome. And this is a great example of the stuff that I send to my team from you. You come up with like a tool like that where I'm like, I didn't know that existed. I'm literally going to type in Guide after this, send it to the team, be like, guys, SOPs from now on, this is what we do. That's awesome. Okay, so let's use that example then. So Guide, and then there's probably like a million other things. Like I see you doing videos of it all the time. What are another few of your favorite AI case or use cases right now?
If you haven't heard me talk about Whisper Flow, then, and you don't follow my like I've been talking about this so much. I am definitely a speaking person, like an in-person person. I hate typing, and like that's crazy because we do a lot of that in marketing. It basically turns the function key on your laptop into like voice to text, which is not a new thing. You can do that in shortcuts anyway. But what it does differently that I love is when you press function, it actually improves your phrasing, your language. It removes the ums, the ahs, any spaces. It formats the text. It does the spelling. It does bullet points. You can kind of, ask it to do whatever you need. So I can't remember the last time I typed an email or anything for that matter. That's one thing that's changed my life. The other one, I've actually got a piece of content coming out on this soon. I don't know whether people have tried this for themselves yet, but ChatGPT obviously has voice mode, which we know. It's a bit like glitchy. It's a bit stop-start. It's quite difficult to use. They've recently updated this. I don't know whether you've tried this, but the other day I was on my way to a meeting, and I had to drive for like an hour and a half across LA, and I was way behind on something that I was supposed to get sorted. So I went into my car, I had it to Apple CarPlay, I put ChatGPT on, and it basically just listens to anything that's going on, and then it responds. So it's not this start-stop feature. So I wrote an entire marketing strategy for a brand, driving an hour and a half from my home to this meeting, not the meeting that I was going to, for like that wasn't the same meeting. And it just got all of my ideas down. It reformatted everything. So when I got back to my desk, it was ready for me to review and like get into the team for design. So that was one way. The other way that I used it was, the idea's just gone out of my head. But the other way, I was in the car and I was driving and I was like, hey, I'm at this location. What are the 7 best pizza spots around me right now? Send them to me. Sent me all the things. So there's like, when you start to think about using AI in that way, it's magic. I also built my company vision for 2026. And like many founders, had 1,000,001 ideas of like things we wanted to do, but the phasing was where I needed support and like what pieces were missing. I went on a hike and I took voice mode and I brain dumped my brain for an hour and a half on this hike. And then I asked it to like make sense of the madness and categorize and start to help me put things into the right order of when we should be thinking about them, or to ask me any questions of what I might missed or what I might not have been following. So I think for me, voice mode has been a game changer. It's been incredible. And I'm writing a book actually at the moment, which is all around brand in the era of AI. So it's authentic intelligence versus artificial intelligence and how to like maintain your brand presence during this AI growth era. So it's all about brain. It's all about why that's important. And I would never have thought of writing a book because that just fills me with dread, but I am voice typing the whole thing. And it's crazy how much you can do in such a short space of time.
Awesome. I love that. I have 2 things to say on that. So one, I just published a book last month.
You did?
So what I did was I took all the podcasts that I've done on this, the Agency Growth Club, and I put it in a NotebookLM, asked it to take out every single quote that was mentioned about hiring, leadership, delegation from like the 32 agency owners I've had on the podcast. It brought down like all of these quotes, and then it would just give me like a prompt of like, Josh, put your expertise on this or whatever. And again, similar to you, I would never have wanted to write a book. I was like, not a chance. I'm not spending a year doing that. But this was actually fun. Every night I'd spend like 2 hours. It would give me a quote, and then it would be like, here's like 3 angles that you could go off on. And it was
NotebookLM, people are sleeping on that. It is golden. So for those of you that don't know, NotebookLM is like a free tool from Google, which is, imagine ChatGPT, but without all of the made up stuff. So it only pulls information from the documents you upload. It doesn't go off in any other tangent, but it allows you to put like you could put 4 or 5 different books in there and start to dissect how they maybe agree with or contradict each other, or the use cases are endless. We have a client that we work with in the construction industry, and a lot of their content, their SEO content is really highly regulated. Before, we needed way more people on their team to fact check and go through and review all of these standards and the rules and regulations. Now we run everything through the guidelines that we have for each of the services and NotebookLM to basically highlight where anything is contradictory to what the guidelines state. So we've got this this other layer of security that's coming from AI. NotebookLM's insane. I love that tool so much.
Quick pause. If you're getting value from this conversation about scaling agencies and hiring top talent, I want to share something that might help you. Are you struggling to find A players for your digital marketing agency? We've got you covered. For SEO experts who turn rankings into revenue, head to SEOforhire.co. For paid media specialists who boost your bottom line, check out paidmediajobs.com. And if you're looking for foot rubs, you're definitely in the wrong podcast. All right, let's jump back into the episode. Would you know, again, I need to hats off to you because I'm pretty sure it was you, one of your videos that I got introduced for NotebookLM. And one of the best use cases that I have for NotebookLM, it's LM, right? It's not LLM.
LM.
Is, so for example, we had a new start with us last Monday, Faith, and wanted to get her up to speed as fast as possible. Created her NotebookLM, where I took like all of our case studies, all of our slide decks, all of our like some of the like important podcasts talking more about the company, podcasts that I've been a guest on, and I basically got it to like, gave it like the prompt of like, this is a new start. I wanted to get up to speed on like client profiles, processes, all of this. Can you create a podcast on it? Because personally, I learned best from like listening to things, and it went and created, I think it was like a 23-minute podcast, but like I listened to it, it's calling her Faith, right? So it's like, it's completely personalized towards her. And yeah, it's like, it's insane.
I think this is the bit that's really exciting for me, because there's so much noise in around this new tool and that new tool, and it can be overwhelming. But I think when you just try and remove yourself from the noise and get into the day-to-day of your work, if you're facing a problem, Google it and see if there's an AI for it, because I bet you there is. Like, this is one of the ways that I discover new tools and new things so quickly, is I will just be like, oh, this is a problem. There's probably an AI for it. And I just go in and I search, and then I find things. The other benefit that does come from doing years of content creation is that tool founders reach out to me before they've launched, because they want my opinion on something. So oftentimes when I drop something that no one's heard about, it's because it's come from, like, I've already seen it for the last 3 months and been testing it. So that's another benefit that comes from like being out there and showing up and doing content. But yeah, I think like the other one that is a killer workflow that's changed my game in running the agency is Fathom. AI note taker, really good. I use the Fathom transcripts for creating content, for following up on the team, for understanding which things we've talked about consistently that maybe haven't moved. And then I also have a Zapier link that goes from every consistent meeting we have with one-to-ones, client meetings, anything that's a rolling meeting. Every time that meeting happens, it will pull all the actions and drop them straight into our Asana board, so we don't miss a thing. And that was one other way that we've just used AI to just fill any gaps that we might have had in project management and task tracking, which now happens so seamlessly. I had a call yesterday with a tool founder that introduced me to something that's blown my mind that I'll be talking about soon. But again, another opportunity came in. I got chatting to her yesterday, loved her story. Like, she's the CEO of this cool company, and she was talking about the story of the startup and like how she got to where she was. And I was so enamored by her startup story. I thought this was like amazing. And so I then took the Fathom transcript of that, and I popped it into my LinkedIn copywriter GPT, and I asked it to pull out her story, and I sent it over to her. And I just said, like, my GPT's just basically built this post for you from the chat we had yesterday. Like, I loved your story and I think you should tell more people about it. And I could just send her that after the meeting. That took me 2 seconds, but it's such a nice addition of, I wouldn't have been able to do that before because I don't have time, but I really, really love the story. And I think more people should know about it. So just the chain reaction of things that can happen because we now have quicker ways to do things is pretty cool.
Awesome. I love that. And okay, so we kind of have already touched on it, but you've pretty much cracked the code to going viral on content with AI. And like you just mentioned LinkedIn. If you go on to LinkedIn, it looks like 90% of people are just using AI the complete wrong way. Like, it's so obvious that they haven't put any thought into it. And it's like, I've even given off to friends in the past. I'm like, guys, I was like, this is so obvious. What advice would you give to, people wanting to stand out a bit more, but still use AI and wanting to build their brand, wanting to build their social media presence?
I have always created content. I love Gary Vaynerchuk. I know he's Marmite for some people, but he's the reason that I started creating content back in 2020. And he's someone that I've listened to so much that when I listen to his podcast now, I know what he's going to say before he's going to say it, because you've consumed that much of a person's like belief on things. And he said something really early on that stuck with me, which was document versus create. Just document what's going on. And I think that's why my content has resonated, because I haven't gone and said, I'm going to create this really complex content plan and I'm going to tick off all these things. I've created content off the back of what I've been doing day to day. So the content I shared around Whisper Flow and NotebookLM and all these things were because I just discovered that myself and I thought it was amazing and I shared it. So I think the more you try and fake being something before you are, the harder it is to create content. But I think if you're living in your zone, you're passionate as hell, and you could talk about that topic every day of the week because you have the experience and the understanding, I think content's easy then. I think it's challenging when you have this dissonance between who you actually are and who you say you are. I think that's where the struggle comes in. And that's when you can see really AI stuff, because people are outsourcing the brain to AI when they need to be thinking, what value do I have? What do I know? What's my lived experience?
Awesome. I love that. And okay, so Marianne, search is changing, I feel like every other week at the minute. So I've heard you speak loads about how you need to be showing up on LLMs, you need to be showing up on AI overviews, or else your clients just won't be able to find you anymore. So what kind of advice would you give to people to show up on AI overviews, get their name out there on LLMs?
So GEO, whatever we're calling it, like good GEO is good SEO. Like the foundations and principles are the same. The way that these models work is they essentially, every word is converted to a number, and every number in the back end of these LLMs has a affinity with another word, which is a number, which shows the amount of times that these two things should appear together, which is how they can predictively, perform the next search, essentially, in simple terms. So the way to get your brand out there, let's say, again, example, let's say it's skincare, let's say it's Korean skincare. Let's say they have a product that is a serum that gives you glass skin. If you have, okay, this is X brand name, Korean skincare, glass skin product. If you are consistent with that naming and how you're phrasing across all of the parts of the internet, whether it's in PR, SEO, social media, or any other places you can distribute content, those words are going to be seen more frequently across the web. So when someone says, I want a Korean skincare product to make my skin look like glass, that evidence is in the back end of these AIs, and it can then surface the topic. This is where brand is a huge part to play in LLM overview features. Because if you have not codified how you sell your products, and every time someone talks about a SKU or a service, they phrase it in a different way, they use different words, they sell it in lots of different, like using lots of different language, you're not building the blocks of that like knowledge base. I love Rand Fishkin. I don't know whether you know him, but he's talked about this a lot.
He's been on this podcast.
Oh, he has? Amazing. I'll have to listen to it. I really like his mindset on things, but he talks about this a lot. He's like, and prompting me to think about this too for myself. But he says whenever he's invited to speak or be on a podcast or an event, he will send the person, you can probably vouch for this, like, I want my name or the phrasing to be Rand Fishkin. I want this bio. I want this term, this term. He doesn't just do that because he's being organized. He's doing that because he's building brand credibility across the web. Because the more people that point back to Google or point back to the LLMs, Marianne DiMarzo, AI, Marianne DiMarzo, SEO, like whatever the phrases are, they're going to consistently build that profile. So this works for brands selling products. This works for people. This works for businesses selling services. Like codify everything that you sell and use the same terminology everywhere. That's brand. That's like, you know, that's why we have slogans. That's why those exist. It's that like memory, not only for humans, but for back-end systems. The other thing that I just want to say about GEO is that please be careful. It's the wild, wild west out there. And there are so many tools saying that they can get you to the top of these LLMs, to the top of, and really audit those. Audit, like whenever a new tool comes across my desk, the first thing I do is I Google the CEO, I go to their LinkedIn and I look at all their history. A, do they have authority in this space? Have they been there for a long time? Are they jumping on a cash grab situation? B, is the tool stating that it can do something that actually doesn't make sense because of the way these models work? The challenge we're going to have is keyword tracking is relatively easy to do. We've done it for a long time. Google's index is very well built. They've built an incredible system. We're now in the era of conversations. There are so many variations of how these conversations can happen. So the fact that someone's claiming that they can get you at the top for every single one of those conversations, to me, is like, that doesn't make sense. So to brands, audit the people that are selling you the thing and make sure it's not snake oil, because there's a lot of that happening. And the other thing would be just to state, SEO is not dead. Good SEO is good GEO. The things that are more important than ever that weren't as important with Google are things like your About Us page. So again, knowing the brand, the vision, the mission, the values, what you stand for, what's important, what you sell, getting all of that on your About Us page is really important because the LLMs are taking that into consideration a lot more. And then the other part is for every single product or service, make sure you're consistent and you're selling it in the same way across all of those distribution mechanisms. And then suddenly you'll be setting yourself up well for success with these LLMs.
I love that. I was presenting an event in London in June, I think, and it had some of the smartest SEOs from big brands to agencies to everything. And the most interesting bit that I took away from that event was that nobody has a clue what's going on right now.
Nobody knows. People are making it up.
You can be on YouTube, you can be on LinkedIn, and everybody seems to know the answer. But in a room full of some of the brightest SEO minds, everybody was like, look, we're all experimenting. We're trying to see if this works, if this doesn't work. And they're putting X amount towards that. And I've been telling everybody that since that event.
Well, the thing is, I love SEOs because SEOs are like die-hard problem solvers. They love a problem. They love to like go and investigate something and have rows and rows of data and try and figure out what's working, right? Like that's the thing I love about SEO. It's like I'm a spreadsheet nerd and I will be that till I die. But the thing is, we've all started to see patterns and signals of what influences, but it doesn't mean that that is set in stone. And I think, you know, Google and SEO has always been a moving target. The SEO industry has always had lots of principles that work and lots of principles that are testing and that we're testing and we don't really know. And I think the same, we can say the same about AI overviews. There are things that we know and we can see in AI overviews where things are being linked from, and we can follow those back and we can decide to optimize those pages. And, you know, these things are common sense strategies that when you follow, okay, so how has this surfaced? Where did this come from? Google your own brand, Google your own products, see where it's pulling the information from, because if that's a reference, enhance that reference. That makes logical sense, right? So I think we've just got to keep moving through this in with not losing our like common sense, logical sense brains to be like, okay, there's all this noise about how we do this, but what makes sense? Where is it pulling the information from? How do we influence that information, or how do we make that better? Again, good SEO is good GEO.
And so just out of curiosity, I don't know if you've got any experience with rebrands or not, but you mentioned, so obviously AI is crawling your About Us page, like everything to see where you've been cited on podcasts, whatever it is. So if you go through a rebrand, you have to go back and change all of that to update it to the new brand's name.
Yeah, we've done a lot of rebrands over time, and that's actually when we do the brain sprint for clients. The B part of that is essentially a rebrand or an elevated version of the brand. So it's vision, mission, values, value proposition, tone of voice, that stuff. So the answer is yes, absolutely you do, because you're presenting your brand to the world in the way that you want it to be found. So yeah, 100%, I would.
Awesome. I know, I feel like we could talk for ages, but I've got two last questions for you.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the developer and vibe coding a few questions back. What's your framework for determining which tasks to automate, use AI, versus keep it human side?
We use AI in all areas of dev. Like we will vibe code, and we'll vibe code most things now, but we will always do the QA with the real dev active live. Like we'll always do the quality assurance of anything that we've built to make sure that it makes sense. So I think same goes for anything with AI. And this is where, you can have someone that doesn't know what they're doing, vibe code a website, and it will probably work. But there will be really obvious things that are missing, or things that the person with no understanding wouldn't have seen because they don't see that. They haven't got that experience. And it's the same for copywriting. You can ask ChatGPT to be an incredible copywriter, but if you're the discernment of talent, but you don't know what's good versus bad, then who's the judge, right? So and I'm not saying don't do that and don't try these things and don't push outside of boundaries that you feel comfortable working within, because you will learn. But just know that if you're trying to exchange cheap all the time for someone that's got years of experience, you're going to come across some issues, and you undoubtedly there will be things you haven't thought of or they haven't thought of. Case in point, the client we just spoke about, that wasn't a situation where we were like, oh yay, that's what's happened. He came back and just said, guys, I'm a bit embarrassed about this, but we had this and now it's not working back end. That's we can go in and we can fix that, because the dev can read the code and he can see why it's just spinning out and it's not resolving its own issue. But I think there was I was listening to a podcast with OpenAI where one of their main devs was talking about this. He was like, the thing is, if an AI gets stuck in a spiral and you don't see it, or you can't resolve it and the AI can't resolve it, that's when you've got a problem.
Awesome. I love that. And okay, my last question for you is, you've built an incredible personal brand, right? What advice would you give to agencies? What's your philosophy on balancing being the face of the business, but also making sure the business can scale without you?
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't think this is going to be a helpful answer, because I find content extremely easy. So for me, putting the camera on and talking doesn't fill me with any dread or fear at all. So I would say if you're playing in your strengths, then your content will resonate. It doesn't have to be video. It doesn't have to be, if you're really good at communicating and talking, use audio. You can, the AI ability to take one piece of content and turn it into other formats now is incredible. I'm someone that, gosh, I mean, most of the content going viral on Instagram right now is carousels. I could create carousels until the cows come home. I just don't like it. I just don't like doing it. So I prefer to do video. I know I'm missing upside there, and maybe we'll have someone on the team plug into the content to do that. But I think if you really sit down with yourself and go, okay, am I good at talking to camera, and do I feel confident doing that? If the answer is yes, and the only thing holding you back is fear, go all in and do it anyway, because you'll get over the fear. If you sit there and think, God, no, that would be a nightmare. There's no way I'm going to show up on camera and create content. I love writing though, and I'm a really good storyteller, and I love creating copy. Go and write and add a photo, or use AI, use Kling to create a video to support the content. Whatever it might be, I think that's where I found it easy to show up, because I'm playing in my area of skill.
Awesome. Marianne, where can people find you?
Oh, good question. I was like, where can they find us? Mary Ann DeMarzo on all social media. So yeah, that would be it.
Thanks for sticking around to the end, and I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're an agency owner that is wanting to scale and wants to continue bringing your business to new heights and doesn't want to put everything on pause for hiring and finding the best talent that's out there in SEO and paid media, well, that's something I can help with. I own a recruitment company that has specialized in both the SEO and paid media sector, and we work with 100+ businesses. So I'm going to leave 2 links below. There's no big pitch here, but if you want to talk over strategy and hiring and how myself and my team can find you the best A-player talent in both the SEO and paid media sector, then please book in, and I look forward to talking to you. Thank you.